Do you know that the man who wrote the best-selling book of the last decade about how to think about money, a book that sold in the millions and became required reading for a generation of investors, spent the years afterward becoming convinced that he had only answered half the question, and that the harder half was not how to accumulate money at all, but what to do with it once you have it? Morgan Housel published The Psychology of Money in 2020. It became a phenomenon. Together with his subsequent work, it has sold well over 10 million copies. Its central argument was that financial outcomes depend far less on intelligence or technical skill than on behavior, on patience, on temperament, on the ability to avoid catastrophic decisions during the moments when catastrophic decisions feel most reasonable. That book was about getting money. In October 2025, he published a follow-up, The Art of Spending Money, subtitled Simple Choices for a Richer Life. It became a Sunday Times #1 and a New York Times bestseller. This one is about the other side, and it turns out to be the side almost nobody has good answers for, because there is an enormous industry devoted to helping you accumulate wealth. Funds, advisors, apps, courses, an entire literature. And there is almost nothing serious devoted to the question of what to actually do with it, beyond a vague cultural assumption that more is better and that the answer will become obvious once you have enough. It does not become obvious. That is the problem the book exists to address. Before going further, nothing here is financial advice. These are ideas about the relationship between money and satisfaction, discussed in original terms. Your decisions are your own. Start with the observation that makes the whole subject worth taking seriously. Housel has described having met a number of billionaires over his career. His conclusion from that exposure is not that they are unhappy. That would be a cliché, and clichés are usually lazy. His conclusion is more precise and more useful, that it is entirely possible to be wealthier than they are, in the sense that actually matters, with a small fraction of the money. That claim only makes sense if you separate two things that ordinary language treats as identical. There is money, which is a quantity, and there is what money is supposed to buy you, which is not a quantity at all. Ask people why they want money, and the honest answers cluster tightly. Security, not lying awake worrying. Autonomy, control over your time, your work, who you spend your days with. Options, the ability to change course. Comfort, the capacity to help people you care about. None of those are money. They are states that money can sometimes purchase at wildly varying and frequently terrible exchange rates. And here is the trap the entire subject turns on. The exchange rate between money and those states is not linear, and it is not even monotonic. Past a certain point, more money can actively purchase less of what you are trying to buy. A larger house is more to maintain. A more prestigious job pays more and takes more hours and more of your attention at 3 in the morning. More possessions is more to insure, store, secure, and worry about. A higher income tends to arrive attached to a higher fixed cost of living, which reduces rather than increases your ability to walk away. The person earning a moderate income with no debt, low fixed costs, and complete control of their schedule may have more of what money is for than someone earning 10 times as much who cannot leave. That is not a moral point about greed. It is an observation about the mechanics of the exchange. Which brings us to the mechanism that does the most damage, and the one most people can feel operating in their own lives, even when they cannot name it. Expectations rise to meet circumstances, almost immediately and almost completely. A significant raise feels transformative for a period that is much shorter than anyone predicts. Then it becomes the baseline. Spending expands into it. And your sense of what you need, genuinely, not as a matter of stated belief, but as a felt experience, recalibrates upward to the new level. The consequence is brutal in its simplicity. Satisfaction is not determined by what you have. It is determined by the gap between what you have and what you expect. Which means there are two levers, and the entire culture pushes on one of them. You can raise what you have. That lever is hard, slow, largely outside your control, subject to luck and circumstance, and, critically, it drags the other end of the ratio up behind it. Every gain partially cancels itself. Or you can control what you expect. That lever is difficult in a different way, requiring deliberate attention against constant cultural pressure. But it is free, immediate, and entirely within your control. Almost all financial effort goes into the first. Almost all the available improvement is in the second. This is not an argument for wanting nothing. Ambition is not the enemy, and a life organized around minimizing desire is its own kind of poverty. It is an argument for noticing that expectations are a variable you can influence rather than a fact you must accept, and that leaving them to be set by whatever you happen to be exposed to means outsourcing your satisfaction to your surroundings. Which raises the question of what actually sets those expectations, and the answer is other people. We do not evaluate our circumstances in isolation. We evaluate them against a reference group, the people we see, compare ourselves to, and take as the standard of normal. For most of human history, that group was small and local. You compared yourself to your village, your trade, your neighbors, roughly your circumstances, roughly your options. That is no longer the case, and the change is more consequential than it is usually credited as being. The modern reference group is assembled from whoever appears on your screen, and what appears on your screen is systematically unrepresentative. It is filtered for the interesting, the successful, the aspirational. It is the top fraction of a percent of outcomes presented at the ordinary frequency of a friend's life, which produces a genuinely novel condition. It is now possible to be objectively comfortable, housed, fed, safe, healthy, better off than the overwhelming majority of humans who have ever lived, while experiencing yourself as behind, because your reference group is a curated selection of extreme outcomes. The critical insight is that this is not a fixed input. Your reference group is, to a substantial degree, chosen. Not entirely. You cannot pick your colleagues or your neighborhood freely. But what you consume, who you follow, what you spend attention on, is more within your control than almost anyone treats it as being. You are choosing the yardstick you measure your life against. Most people never notice they are choosing. There is a second failure mode, and it is subtler because it does not look like a mistake at all. A great deal of spending is not for the buyer. It is signaling, communicating status, taste, or membership to an audience. That is not automatically foolish. Signaling is a real function with real returns. Humans are social, and status has genuine consequences for opportunity and treatment. The problem is that people routinely misidentify their own motive. They believe they want the object when what they want is to be seen having it. And those two desires respond to completely different things. If you want an object, you will still want it when nobody knows you own it. If you want to be seen, the satisfaction depends entirely on an audience, which makes it fragile because audiences are fickle, because the standard keeps moving, and because everyone else is signaling too, so the bar rises continuously. There is a further problem, and it is close to the heart of Housel's argument. Status spending frequently does not even accomplish its own goal. The mechanism fails at the point where people assume it works. Someone acquires an expensive and conspicuous possession hoping to be admired. But observers looking at that possession do not generally admire the owner. They imagine themselves owning it. The object is the focus of attention. The person attached to it is largely incidental, which means a substantial category of expensive purchases is bought to obtain a response that the purchase does not actually produce. The buyer receives the cost, the maintenance, and the obligation, and very little of the admiration that motivated the whole thing. So what does hold up? The pattern that emerges from the research on this, and it is one of the more robust findings in the area, is that spending which reliably improves life tends to share certain features, and they are not the features people expect. The most consistent is control over time. Purchases that buy back hours, or buy the ability to decide how hours are spent, hold their value in a way that possessions generally do not. Shortening a commute, paying to remove a recurring obligation you dislike, structuring work to gain autonomy over your schedule. These do not deliver a spike of pleasure at the moment of purchase, which is exactly why they are undersold. Nobody is advertising them. But they change the texture of ordinary days permanently, and adaptation works against them far more slowly. The second is experiences over objects, and the reason is worth understanding rather than repeating as a slogan. An object is largely static. You adapt to it and it recedes into the background of your life. An experience is processed, remembered, retold, and integrated into your sense of who you are. It also tends to be shared, which links it to relationships. And it does not sit in your house demanding maintenance. The third is spending on other people. Consistently, across many studies, money directed toward others produces more durable satisfaction than the same money spent on oneself. This is not a moral claim, it is an empirical one, and it is unusually well replicated. And the fourth, which is the least discussed, is spending that removes anxiety rather than adding pleasure. Paying off a debt that has been sitting in the back of your mind. Building a reserve large enough that an unexpected bill is an inconvenience rather than a crisis. This buys nothing visible. It produces no photograph. What it produces is the absence of a low background hum of worry. And people consistently underestimate how much that hum was costing them until it stops. Which brings us to what may be the single most valuable thing money can buy, and the one that receives the least attention because it cannot be photographed and nobody sells it. The ability to say no. Not in the abstract. Concretely, to decline work you find degrading. To leave an environment that is damaging you. To refuse a client, a promotion, a relocation, an arrangement that would pay more and cost more than it pays. That capacity is purchased almost entirely with the gap between what you earn and what you spend, and with the reserve that gap accumulates. It is not purchased with income. A person on a very high income who has expanded their commitments to match cannot say no to anything. Their obligations have removed the option. A person on a modest income with low fixed costs and a genuine buffer can say no repeatedly. This is the sharpest illustration of Housel's central point. Two people, one earning many times the other, and the one with less money, has more of the thing that money is supposed to be for. And note what actually purchased it. Not a high income. Restraint. The decision, made repeatedly and unglamorously, not to expand consumption to match capacity. The gap is the asset. Everything protective flows from it. There is a counterweight that any honest treatment has to include, because the ideas above become obnoxious without it. All of this applies above a threshold. Below that threshold, where the rent is genuinely at risk, where medical costs are genuinely unaffordable, where there is no buffer of any kind, more money is straightforwardly, unambiguously better. Every one of the effects described here operates in the region where basic security has been achieved, and the question becomes what to do next. Telling someone in genuine financial distress that expectations are the real variable is not wisdom. It is an insult dressed as philosophy. The research on money and well-being is clear that below a certain level, additional income reduces real suffering, and that effect is large. So the honest framing is this. Money solves a specific and severe set of problems, completely up to a point. Past that point, it stops solving problems and starts presenting choices. And the choices are where the difficulty lives, because nothing in the culture prepares anyone to make them. And the default answer of simply acquiring more stops working without announcing that it has stopped. Which is, in the end, what the book is actually about. Not budgets, not a system. Housel is explicit that he is not offering hacks or one-size-fits-all rules, and the reason is structural rather than modest. The correct answer genuinely differs between people because it depends on what you actually value, and only you have access to that. What he offers instead is a way of examining your own relationship with money, where your expectations came from, whose approval you are spending for, which purchasers are buying the thing you think they are buying. That reframing has a specific consequence worth stating plainly. If satisfaction is determined by the gap between circumstances and expectations, and if expectations are substantially shaped by choices you control, then a meaningful share of financial well-being is available immediately, without earning anything additional. Not all of it. The threshold is real, and it matters enormously. But past it, the binding constraint stops being how much you have and becomes how clearly you understand what you actually want. And that is not a question a higher income answers. It is one that a higher income lets you avoid asking for longer. The accumulation problem has a large industry devoted to it. The spending problem, what any of it is for, has almost nobody, and it is the one that eventually arrives for everyone who solves the first. Again, none of this is financial advice. It is a set of ideas about a question most people postpone until circumstances force it. The argument of the book is simply that it is worth asking earlier, while the answer can still change what you do.